Welcome to TechNow, the web series for ServiceNow builders, developers, admins of all skill levels on a wide variety of topics on the Now platform. My name is Chuck Tomasi, and it is my great pleasure to have a wonderful topic for you today. Quick introduction about myself, in case you haven't met me or watched one of these or many of the other videos before. I have been a customer for a couple of years with ServiceNow. I've been with ServiceNow since 2010 as a wide variety of topics, but ultimately right now I'm a senior developer advocate, which means I work with our builders and developers and admins and our product specialists and developers and product managers to bring you this wonderful information. But I'm going to keep it short so we can move on over to Craig Stepp. Craig, what are you doing here?
I'm here to support everybody else. So I'm the senior manager of Cloud Labs, and I handle all of the infrastructure in the background for our classes that we offer at ServiceNow, or some of the events like Knowledge or the Now at Work maybe you just attended, which we just wrapped up. I've been here for, coming up on 8 years. So I started off in specializing in orchestration, and now I'm in the cloud side of things. So that's where I'm at. And, of course, I enjoy photography, Linux, and podcasting. Not necessarily in that order. Depends on the time of day. So, Jeremy, what are you doing here?
I guess I'm just a member of the sideshow called TechNow on this wonderful Tuesday here in Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Jeremy Duncan. Yeah, the Peanut Gallery. Won't, won't. Oh, where's my noise? Hold on. Clown, there we go. All right, so I'm a platform architect here at ServiceNow. I started my career in IT, played many roles, and became a ServiceNow customer a decade ago. I'm feeling so old, but I fell in love with this platform 10 years ago and have spent time in consulting, and now have spent a little over 2 years here at ServiceNow as a part of our Workflow Design Studio team. I've been a knowledge attendee and speaker since 2013. Love our events. It's like a pep rally for our product, and I really love our customers and spending time with everybody. So it's coming up. It's in just a few months away, or actually several months away. But if I see you there, or if you see me, please stop and say hi. Just a quick fun fact about me. I spent a little over a decade as a reserve police officer here in the city that I live in, and I do enjoy camping a lot with my wife and kids in my free time. So without further ado, Mr. McKee, what in the world are you doing here?
I do evangelism with the developer program. I've been doing like app dev for 20 some odd years. I was actually a customer twice, and my first time around as a customer back in the Berlin days, I actually was raking Chuck over the coals about technical questions. It's kind of fun to be on the same team now.
Same.
And I've always been like working on custom apps. I've never done like an ITSM instance. And I wrangle the content for CreatorCon. I've got my OG CreatorCon 2015 T-shirt on today. And I'm probably best known for building LiquorBot, the other alcohol-powered ServiceNow demo. And with that, I'm going to pass over to my partner in crime on this.
Hey, everybody. My name's Brian Griffith. And yeah, I've known Jason for probably more years than I've been a developer. And I've been developing for about 20 years. Yeah. And so for the last probably 4 years, I've been working on the Now platform. And for the last 3 years, I've been an actual employee. And like similarly, what I've been hearing is I kind of got word of this platform, and I just had to get more. And so that's why I joined up and wanted to learn more. Currently, I'm a senior engineer and working in the manufacturing industry product, and it's a newer product line, and it's a lot of fun. And just similar to Jason and others, we just like to tinker on other interesting things, like things that can serve up beer. Pastimes for me is board games, CSS, JavaScript, that type of fun stuff. So that's kind of what I added to this whole effort. And with that, back to you, Craig. I think we already know why you're here.
Yeah, I think I know I'm here. Anyway, so give you a rundown on today's agenda. We're going to take a look at what is the Kegerator, if you don't already know. We're going to talk about the origin story and how it works and all that good stuff, and dive into, I guess, the creation of it. And we're going to, of course, take quick question and answer along the way. So if you have any, be sure to put it in the chat, and we'll get to it. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe or go find Breakpoint at all the places that you can find all your great podcasts that you listen to already. Chuck's got does Breakpoint, and tomorrow's Breakpoint is with James Neal, and he's the developer of Explore. It's one of the more popular downloads in the share for ServiceNow. And I was just taking a look at it because I haven't really looked at it myself, and I thought, well, this is pretty good. So it ought to be an interesting episode. So go check that out. Again, that's James Neal, and that's tomorrow's Breakpoint, or last one is coming out. So
quick note, Craig, that James is on the schedule to come back and show us Explore in the future. So this is more of the backstory. Get to know him, get to know his company, get to know the backstory of Explore. But I said, hey, we really want to see Explore, and not to coin a term, but explore. Explore with a explore without the explore. I got you. Right. That's so. Keep tabs on what's coming in TechNow, because there's always something new and interesting.
Absolutely. So speaking of development, which is what Explore's for, you can go get your hands dirty on some instances and some code and different applications and try all kinds of things with ServiceNow. You can go to developer.servicenow.com. Not only can you get a free personal instance so you can try out, but you get early access to builds. You get a lot of documentation on client side and the server side, so you can start building your own code, and also participate maybe in some of the developer events that we have. All that stuff, the development blog, so on and so forth. You can find it over there at developer.servicenow.com. And now, just to remind you, next Tuesday, or the next TechNow Tuesday, I know, not next Tuesday, you won't be here. November 30th, we're going to have Brad Tilton. He's going to talk about building custom experiences with the UI Builder. So you want to register for that, and there's the link right there to register for that episode. And now I'll turn it over to Jason, and we're going to talk about the Kegerator and give us the lowdown.
All right. So let's deconstruct the Kegerator. So just level set, if you don't know what a Kegerator is, it is a modified refrigerator that's got a keg of beer inside that will dispense beer. And it has a cousin called a jockey box, which is just a cooler full of ice that cools down the beer as it flows through. And we've run this all over the world here. So up in the upper left here, this is Tony on the show floor at K19. And this little red and white thing is our actual portable jockey box. And on the upper right here, this was in London, where we had a completely different keg system that we ran. And it makes beer cold, or brute beer, or nitro coffee if you want to be avant-garde. So the origin story of the Kegerator. So this is my friend Rachel, and this was like a personal problem. Rachel got a job near me, and one of the perks of being a professional brewer is you get to give kegs to your friends. And she says, Jason, I've been doing this 20 years, and I've never had a friend close by with a Kegerator I can give beer to. So given being threatened with free beer, I have to build a Kegerator. But also, Rachel's like a little bit, a ways down the road. It's not like she's in the same town. So once I've got a Kegerator, I don't want to not have beer. So this was really sort of solving my problem of making sure I never run out of beer, and I can always sort of connect with Rachel before the next keg dies. So actual hardware. This is a picture of the travel kit. It's got a flow sensor in the very upper right and a couple temperature sensors, and they are all hanging off of a Raspberry Pi with a touch screen. And I love this because I can just throw it in my backpack and go, and then we just splice the the beer line from whatever kegerator we're using into the flow sensor. And those of you with a little bit of hardware background, you'll ask, like, why do we use flow sensors and not weight sensors? And weight sensors are expensive, they're bulky, and since we are just doing estimations, like the lack of accuracy of the flow sensor isn't really a big deal. We just kind of, adjust our reorder time window to make up for it. And that's like well worth, being able to throw it in a backpack and go. This is my Kegerator at home. It's the same architecture. It's just a lot more temperature probes and a lot more flow sensors because I've got a triple tap setup. But same strap the temperature sensors to the keg, same flow sensor architecture. With the addition of, since I've got a Raspberry Pi to monitor all of this, I might as well use that Pi to turn the Kegerator on and off. So this is inside the control box, and there's just a relay that turns the chest freezer on and off. And you can see there's two iterations of this. One is a little bit bigger with components more spaced out, and we'll talk a little bit more about the hardware reliability of all of this. And then just those of you curious, inside a Kegerator, this is what it looks like. We've got all our gas lines, just a lot more wires going out the back running to that Pi. So having sort of set our baseline for what a Kegerator is, let's go ahead and see how some of this works.
I love the visual of you slapping that Pi unit in your backpack. But I also had the visual, until you said it, that's all you need to take. Until you said it, I imagined you trying to get like a quarter barrel into your overhead on the plane.
Oh yeah, as much as I would love to, take the big triple tap monstrosity on the road. Yeah, no, life's too short to deal with shipping that. So on the hardware side, or the software side of the hardware side, all of this is run by Node-RED, and I absolutely love Node-RED. Because it's like it's the same philosophy as ServiceNow. It's all declarative. You can write a little bit of JavaScript if you need to, but you don't have to for the most part. And you just build a flow. It's kind of like Flow Designer for hardware. So inside the Kegerator flows here, first thing we do when it starts up is we load a configuration. So a lot of the parameters that make the Kegerator work are controlled by or configured on the ServiceNow side. So it boots up, it pulls down, it's like, what's the high temperature, what's the low temperature, and brings that down. And then just got kind of a couple different blocks here. One is just the flow, right? So when you're pouring a beer, those flow sensors are counting pulses, and after there hasn't been any pulses for a while, we do the math and send up to ServiceNow, hey, I just poured half a liter of beer. And then we've got our temperature controls that are monitoring the Kegerator ambient temperature, the keg temperature, and figuring out, based on the average of that, do we need to turn the freezer on or turn the freezer off? And we also send running data, like, what is the current temperature of the kegs? What's the current temperature Kegerator? And if we go over or under any of those thresholds that have been defined as far as temperature, we'll actually send events into the instance as well. So that's pretty much, just more temperature sending, goes back up. And then my keg tower, it was running warm. I put a fan on it, put another temperature sensor. So this basically turns on a little blower motor that cools down the tower. So with kind of that Node-RED overview, and by the way, if you want to get into IoT and like ServiceNow is your strong suit, like Node-RED is like an awesome place to start. Super easy to get going, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt, Jason, but yeah, we actually use this in combination with some pies with a hackathon. We just played with the Sense Hat, so it does like the temperature and all that sort of thing. But it's amazing how fast you can ramp up and kind of get into the meat of what you want to do with a hackathon. This stuff is cool.
So here's all the pieces, and this is kind of what it looks like on the show floor. This is a demo keg because it's morning time here, and I'm not pouring beers from the Kegerator. But we're actually tracking volume over time and the temperature. So this is a jockey box. So the temperature is going to be rising over time as the ice melts, and that's one of our sort of when the ice gets too warm, we need to fire an event to get more ice in the box. And then the all-important, based on the consumption rate, when are we going to run out of beer? So, Brian, you want to pour a couple beers so we can see how this goes down?
Sure. Yeah, you'll see that.
Yeah, hand one over here. I'll take one.
Yeah, there you go. We basically just have some watchers on the data so that the UI will kind of auto-refresh when we notice these events. And
notice as our rate, as we pour the beers, the empty rate goes off. Goes down. So this is kind of the core of how this works. Main features we used on this, metric base is kind of what's providing our data store for this. CMDB CIs are our data model. We use a lot of scripted REST and Flow Designer, and then obviously Service Portal. So if you're not familiar with metric base, it is the time series database that underlies our operational intelligence product. So if you've used OI, you've used metric base. And one of the things, when we went into this project, we're using, we should be using OT. We are using IoT Bridge, and back then it was IoT Hub, but it wasn't ready for us to start building. So we knew that we were going to have a lot of refactors in this. So we have a really strong separation between the UI and the back end, kind of because we knew we were going to have to rebuild this a couple times as life went on. And we basically generate a JSON data model that is consumed by the service portal. But we also realize, hey, kind of want to add a mobile to this and other UIs. And now it turns out that now experience is on our roadmap. So, Brian, you want to kind of walk us through our data model here?
Yeah, you bet. So the core of our data here is the CMDB. So these are all CIs. It gets into that kind of connected ops realm a little bit more, I think. That's probably our future. And like Jason said, we wanted to kind of keep it pretty generic. So we based most of this off of the hardware class and kind of made our own classes, kind of waiting for when other teams may formally introduce the right CI classes. The exception is the Kegerator monitor itself, the Raspberry Pi, I think is based off of the
IoT
some
device.
kind of IoT class. Yeah, IoT device. Yeah. Thank you. And so that's pretty much what we have. So we also, you may notice, we don't have everything down to like the sensors. We pretty much, the main stuff we modeled here is the Kegerator itself, which contains everything, the keg and the tap, and there could be multiples, multiple kegs and taps. This diagram is just showing you the one, like we showed in the service portal example just previously. And then all of that information is kind of sent into the Kegerator monitor, and then the monitor itself is what we'll send to the inbound REST that's on our ServiceNow instance. So now we start to get into how does ServiceNow play. And so we decided that was probably the push model was the simpler approach. So we do, I think every minute we'll push the temperature metrics. And then anytime we detect the tap flow, once that flow stops, we then send that packet of data as well. And
so
then,
your big, just to add real quick, your big differentiator, you start to think about your data model, and as you grow, one-offs or even 5s or 10s, right, sending over some temperature data, no big deal as far as inbound REST and how your instance can handle that. As we start, you've mentioned connected ops and IoT bridge. The power, the play there for those two products is going to be when you start talking about thousands of messages per second times thousands of devices. So that's where you get enabled on our platform to do those two products. But this method here still works great, right? And folks that, when they hear connected ops and IoT bridge, they're like, hey, we've been passing stuff to the instance for a long time. But that enables you to get, if you were to look at this from an enterprise perspective, if you had thousands of restaurants with tens of thousands of devices and sensors pushing to the instance, that's where that bridge is going to play a big part in your growing data model there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And if you abstract the idea, we're avoiding a P1 beer outage here, but it could be basically whatever inventory, coffee or wood or whatever you got going on. Let's see here. I think that covers that slide. So on to the user experience. And so we have what we've showed you already is our dashboard. And you may have seen in those kind of tinier views from those show floor pictures, we had the little Pi touch screen. So it's about like an 8-inch screen. So we wanted to make a very simple but accessible kind of dashboard for you to interact with on the show floor and kind of quickly see what's going on. And so for now, we just have a couple of metrics that matter on those charts, and then kind of our big gauge here on the left. This is, I think, an older prototype, so we don't have the time to empty in the lower left corner.
But all-important time to empty.
Yeah, the predictiveness part, that's the whole kind of core, what's happening behind the scenes. So that's, it's a pretty simple UI for now. It's pretty much just a informational only. There is a small little kind of maintenance feature where you can swap a keg, which is kind of an important feature because in our example with the show floor, we might be serving root beer or coffee in the morning time. And then we want to take that offline and then put the beer on in the afternoon. And then maybe for some reason you want to bring the coffee back for afternoon coffee time. So if you already have that keg data set, what its volume is, you can just kind of swap it in and out off of the Kegerator itself. So that was kind of a handy function. I like to think of this as a model for other supply chain things too. If Sure. This could be medicines, life-saving drugs that need to stay at a certain temperature, or some of the stuff that Jeremy talked about last month really plays into this well. We put it in a fun context of let's have beer on the showroom floor, but there's lots of other places you could take this.
I had a conversation on the showroom floor that somebody saw this and said, man, I need this for my call center, and he wanted to track call volume so he could predictively get more people on the next shift if the call volume was trending upwards too much.
Wow, that hits close to home with a lot of people that are watching this today.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. So that's the show floor dashboard. And then the other side of the user experience is more the administrative side, or our CI management. And so probably most of you are familiar with these screens and that type of thing, but this gives you a quick peek at the relationships we have. The keg gets cooled by the Kegerator. The tap dispenses from the keg. The smart keg holds the taps, that type of thing. So we have our relationships. I think we only had to create one new relationship type, and I'm having a hard time remembering what that is now.
It was cool.
It was cool. Okay.
I was going to make a comment because I wouldn't think that dispenses from is an out-of-box relationship.
No, it's not. You're right, Chuck. I think those are both.
So cool.
That sounds right.
Those are awesome. Proof that you can build just about anything in that CMDB.
I'll say it's nothing quite like putting your kegs in the CMDB. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we tried to reuse, pretty much what you get in the baseline as much as possible. So this is the back end here and we'll take a closer look in another demo here in a little bit, but this is where we can kind of quickly spin up more kegs and that type of thing and add them to your Kegerator. And we had some development necessities, so we did add some UI actions you might see back here where we can pour a beer, so we can do a virtual pour, which is what we've been doing today. It's way too early. Or you can reset your keg volume to full and that type of thing. But the other ones is, like you see here, the big green button on the left is Create Kegerator. So like Jeremy was saying, what if you want to start to really enterprise this? So we're looking at those use cases of how do you ramp up more quickly and onboard maybe more sites or Kegerators and that type of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, at one point we had 4 Kegerators running because the parts are easy to reproduce. So we had mine running, we had some show floor ones, and we had one running in the Tokyo office of all places.
Right. So, and that's another thing to point out is your location could be wherever, and the instance is the kind of glue between everything.
So let's talk about metric base. This is kind of the heart of it. It's a time series database. So it's tracking a lot of like sort of small data points over time, and like I said earlier, it underlies our OI product. So you probably see it in terms of like server load or network capacity, or we need to spin up some more VMs. But we're using this for beer consumption rates. And one of the great things is these predictive triggers. It's not just being reactive, but it's knowing when it's going to come down, when it's going to go down, or when we're going to run out. So we started with the predictive triggers, but one of the sort of challenges is triggers are a fixed period of time. So the time to reorder a keg on the show floor is like 15, 20 minutes. The time to reorder from Rachel is like, 4 to 6 weeks, depending on our schedule. So we actually used a script that's calling the predictive triggers or the predictive calculation under the hood in metric base to figure out the consumption rate. And we're also storing the temperatures in metric base. And one of the other things we can do with that is fire off some notifications when you put a new keg in and that keg gets down to a serving temperature. And then our flows. We actually used just about every combination of trigger in Flow Designer at the time. So our reorder alert is we use a repeating timed trigger, and that's because we're actually looking at every single Kegerator, and that's based on the consumption rate and the reorder window and variable reorder windows. When we have events, they're just like, simple, hey, we have an event of this type that came in, we need to notify somebody. And the metric-based gap trigger, which is, I love this particular feature. So you can actually take action on not having data. So you saw my kind of janky homebrew setup there. And, perhaps if my Kegerator is not reported in for a certain amount of time, something's caught on fire in that box. And actually, it hasn't caught on fire, but the cheap hobby-grade components that make up a lot of that do have a tendency to die off. And then we did scripted REST APIs because a couple different reasons, but it's all scripted REST APIs. So when we pour beer, we're sending up, hey, I've sent this volume of beer, and we needed to update both metric-based data and glide record data in one shot. And also, I'm a really big fan of keeping my IoT devices dumb. So I didn't want to have to send down sysids and line up the sysids with the internal device IDs. And at the time, metric-based REST APIs couldn't update on anything other than a sysid. They can now. for pulling down configuration, we've got half a dozen CIs at minimum, so we wanted to pull down a single JSON document instead of make a bunch of table API calls. And then when we're sending events up, again, the Kegerator, if it's like over temperature, once a minute, it's just like, hey, I'm over temp, I'm over temp, I'm over temp. And we wanted to debounce those events. So if there's already an active event running, we don't want to actually create a new one. We just want to update it with the latest over temperature.
Jason, how many of those scripted REST APIs could be potentially converted to REST-triggered flows now?
Most, let's see, they pretty much all could at this point, actually.
Okay. The only differentiation is in a REST-triggered flow, you can't return a custom response. So if that's okay, then I'd say start converting. Yeah, the configuration where we're doing the JSON document, and that's a GET, so that's about the only one that really doesn't do that. Everything else is just kind of fire and forget, returns a 204, yay.
Right.
Kind of deal. So we kind of talked you through it. Let's actually take a look at how some of this looks in action here.
And one thing to mention while we're getting set up here is definitely if you have any questions, please let us know in the Q&A. But also keep in mind that we built this for Knowledge 19. So this was using Madrid at the time. So we're still looking at as things obviously evolve over time, just like what Chuck was mentioning and Jeremy even on the connected ops stuff. There's definitely newer stuff that we need to consider as we evolve and go forward.
So here's that back-end interface that Brian was talking about, and the kind of different parameters we have, high temperature, low temperature for what it should be, and these are both alerts for everything, and then if it is a Kegerator type, then that's also what controls the relay and our reorder time. On our taps, we have flow factors, which in our demo data didn't fill that one in, but let's just save that. And then on our keg, we have what is the volume of the keg, or what is the size of the keg, and then what is the current volume. And these are metric-based fields for that keg. And this is where we can reset the volume for when we fill it up again. So let's just say we've refilled our keg. So there we are at 14 liters. We'll reset it. Volume jumps back up. Our UI is updated. And these are all the different sort of elements that get gathered up and put in that configuration document that gets sent down to the Kegerator to control the node red flow. We were talking about the events and debouncing the events. So it comes into our event comes in, and again, this is over temperature, under temperature. And first thing we do is just look to see, do we have an open event on this element? And then if we do, we update the values, because if your temperature is rising, you want to capture each progressive update of that. But it's still a things are on fire kind of event. And I just want to do a quick detour to we actually had to write our own linear regression algorithm because we were calling an undocumented API in metric base, and that's a bad thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that exciting journey, but it's all of our calculated, how do we get the consumption rate for this keg?
And if it's undocumented, it runs the risk of going away.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Exactly.
Or not working the same.
Yeah. So this is our reorder. This is really our kind of most interesting flow of the setup. So we just kind of run that every so often, and anything that is currently installed and actually has somebody to bug about it, we just kind of go through and pull all of the kegs and ultimately get the consumption info. And this is a custom action that we built. But all that custom action does really is calls that get consumption rate from our Kegerator utility script, which then goes off and does all of our linear fit regression, and then does a couple, calculations of like, what's the volume at which we need to reorder, where is it at, returns it back, and if we got data on the keg and it's going to be empty soon, then we flag it and we send an email. So if you're doing this in a larger environment, you probably want to automate that keg reorder and hit a REST API. But Rachel doesn't have a REST API, so I've got to email her. Although actually, after having heard this talk track, her wife said, "Oh my gosh, Rachel, you need to brew a REST IPA." So we've been lobbying Rachel to make a REST IPA.
I already trademarked that name. That's mine.
And then the rest of our flows are very much our metric-based gap trigger flow. So this is my things are on fire. So again, I'm just looking for, do I have somebody to harass? And if it hasn't checked in, we just basically say, hey, it's absent, and send a it's on fire email to, me in this case. And these are our gap triggers. And really, it's super simple. If we haven't heard from it in 30 minutes, that's a problem. And that is, that's sort of the heart of it. I love the flow designer pieces of this because they're not actually all that interesting. It's very much something happened. Let's update a record and send a notification. And how many zillion problems do we have that's all you have to do to solve for them?
So back to the portal, which is one of the things I took a major role in. And again, back in mid-TRID times, we decided portal would be the choice. And we do have a roadmap where we're looking into different UIs, mobile, and other fun things coming up. So with that in mind, we kind of took the idea, like Jason said, we kind of made an abstraction layer with the data. So behind this portal, we have a widget. And in the widget, we have the server script we kept as small as possible so that we could deal with refactors. And so we have our script include libraries that basically go and get us the appropriate data and kind of act as our contract to the front end. And we hope that we'll be able to either reuse or with small adjustments reuse that in different UIs in the future. So this is where we start to go, okay, I'm just going to pour another beer here so you can see that reacting. So this is where the design is. We made kind of decisions knowing that we would probably do refactors. So what I decided is not a great production option, and I made one giant widget. And the reason I went with that is it was kind of prototyping. So basically it allowed me to kind of have more rapid development so we could fail fast. We went through, I'd say, several iterations of what we want this to look like and that type of thing. When you first come to the portal, if you have multiple Kegerators, you can kind of pick them. And so we've started to kind of tinker a little bit with what would multiple UIs look like on the tiny screen and that type of a thing. And so all of this is actually just one widget. So this is kind of a don't do this for production. But when it comes to proof of concepts and prototyping, it does allow you to be a little, I'd say, more rapid. So things like these different regions in the UI probably would have been better to have been templates or even their own widgets. But by making it one widget, we can kind of get out of the widget communication game a little bit. But at any rate, so you can see that because of that, the client script does get a little lengthy. Although I'd say a good half of this is all about the charts. So we did, again, use as much baseline configuration or baseline features as possible, but we did bring in a third-party charting system. I think there's now much better options in the platform in the new version. So that's on our roadmap.
We're very excited about. We're excited about Now Experience because, like, a lot of the stuff we had to hand roll is like already there. So it's going to be much cooler on the next iteration or easier.
Yeah. Yes, there's a lot of really great visualization components out there that we're looking forward to playing with. Again, on the server script, it's pretty short for everything that's going on here. It's pretty much supporting. This is kind of tiny, but it's supporting the major actions of, give me some fresh data, give me a specific kegerator. We did have an order keg button, which does fire off the. It was a to do. that's when we want to add in the event order where it may hit a REST API, or in Jason's case, the IPA. And getting the event data. And so events are our own table based off of task, and it's just a Kegerator event. And that allows us to track the events coming off the monitor. Let's see, swap keg. Yeah, so again, we kept it as tiny as possible, and pretty much everything is using this Kegerator utils as the main kind of interface. And that allows you to abstract your front end and back end pretty well.
So we learned a lot on this project, and kind of summing this up in best practices are best practices for a reason. We broke a lot of rules because we were building the demo for a product that was in beta. In fact, actually the first iteration of it, we didn't even have the IoT Hub code on it. So we refactored the tables a bunch. We kept, creating them, deleting them, creating them, delete. I think we've done it like 4 times now. And spend your time to get your data model right, because it gets kind of squirrely when you delete and recreate tables that with the same name that many times over and over and over again. Using undocumented APIs, it does make every upgrade scary, and it worked really great until it didn't. So every time we have like a rev, it's like a fire drill. On the plus side, I found, I've got a number of bug reports I filed on metric base that my undocumented API revealed some bugs in real APIs. So it was useful from a development perspective, but maybe not so much for production code. And another thing we would have done differently is if you're doing in production, just a single subflow with all the reorder and a couple different linear predictive metric-based triggers for, basically show floor and home use, which are, our 2 big ones, and just kind of fix the reorder window on those. And then, what Brian talked about with our service portal, single widget. There's a balance point between too few and too many. And then kind of going forward, like we've sort of talked about this, we do want to upgrade the UI to Now Experience. We need to actually make better use of connected ops on this. Turns out hardware failures are a bigger impact to the beer availability living with this Kegerator at home. All those hobby grade components, they tend to blow up. And actually, I've gone through enough components now that I can describe a pretty good model of, based on the data you're getting and not getting from the device, can kind of actually identify which particular element blew up, right? Was it the relay, or was it the relay? Was it the power supply? All sorts of things like that. So I probably have to hit up Jeremy to get some better connected ops pieces. Want to polish up the UI, and just kind of talk about, this does apply to other use cases, right? We talked about medicine storage. We talked about the call center conversation I had at K19. Actually, I've taken this and made a custom spin that monitors my pool. So is it going to be warm enough to swim? Because I'm up in Washington and a solar heating system doesn't work as well in a place where it rains 9 months out of the year. Hand it off to Craig.
Actually, I'll pass it back to Chuck.
Whoa, hot potato.
Yeah. Pass it over here. Pass it over there. Right.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian and Jason, for walking us through that, just the overview right down to the technical. We saw code, and we like code on this show. When coding is appropriate. We also saw flows. We like flows even better than code. That ought to be a T-shirt.
Right.
I like it.
Sold.
Some quick reference information for you if you haven't been on this webinar before. Of course, the people that are attending live have the resource panel with much of the same information. But we encourage you to go to docs.servicenow.com if you want to learn more about metrics base or service portal or any of the elements that they showed you in here, minus Node-RED, which is nodered.org, if I remember right, guys? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Still remember that one because I have to go do an update soon. Community.servicenow.com if you've got questions out there. Developer.servicenow.com. Go get your free personal developer instance. The only part of this you wouldn't be able to include yourself is metric-based because it's a different setup. It requires a third server and our technical support people to help you out with that. All of these episodes that we've done in the past, TechNow, are available at devlink.com/TechNow. If you've got questions, let us know in the comments, whether you're watching this live now or later. And I don't see any, which means we've reached the end of the show. Again, thank you to Jeremy and Craig for helping out with the background stuff, getting this planned. Jason and Brian for executing. For everybody on board that's about to wave goodbye. Thank you very much. And we will see you again next time, November 30th, for building awesome experiences with UI Builder. So, bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. See ya.